ago, none of this existed. 50 years ago, this area was nothing more than a few isolated townships, serving the vast coal deposits in the mountains behind. Today, this is Wollongong. Today, this is the BHP's Port Kembla steel mill. The coal mines still operate. In fact, they're more important than ever. They might even be more important than the steelworks within a few years. But today, it is the steelworks that dominate the skyline and determine the life of the town. Workers from 68 different countries work here. They make the steel upon which Australia's industry depends. But if you're looking for a job, don't go to Wollongong. BHP is laying off thousands of workers because it claims they are not productive enough. Here, a Wollongong resident explains what it means to live in the shadow of BHP.
The demand is still on to have round-the-clock pollution officers here. You know, they store it up in the day when it's seen and let it out at night. I think it might be a little bit better, but then, of course, the steelworks is running down. There's a little creek that runs just between here and Corrimal, clear stream that you could have got a billy full of water out of that much trouble. Nowadays there wouldn't be a stream on this side of the mountain that would be fit for a drink of water, or even in some cases for animals to drink because of the pollution. But on many occasions you find the tops of cars covered with ash. Some said if they didn't hose it off it would burn into the Duco even. People that hung stockings on the line was getting them holes in them through the particular acid in the pollution that was coming out at that time. I saw a chap in South Wollongong at one stage who'd just finished painting his house, and a southerly blew from the then exposed coal dumps. We have fought to get the coal dumps covered in out there, and this newly painted house was covered with black particles. He had to take it all off, get it all off, back to the surface again and start again, but there was no compensation. It was just one of the hazards, an act of God I think they call it.
There was a time when Wollongong was a boom town. Even in the depression of the 1930s, the unemployed flocked to the expanding Port Kembla steelworks in search of a job. Using the packing cases from the new plant and machinery, they built a shanty town. The jobless waited at the factory gates for a siren to sound. The siren meant another worker had been killed or badly injured. There was a job going. By the time the new man started, the dead man's blood had been washed away. Port Kembla steelworks quickly became known as the Bloodhouse. The history of BHP is not very glorious. In the 1880s, a group of industrialists had bought in New South Wales. With the help of British investors, they developed a rich mining venture. But they did not work in the mine themselves. The men who went underground were the real builders of BHP, but they got none of the capital gains. Instead, they got disease, they got poisoning, and they got wage cuts. And when they resisted the wage cuts, they got the mounted police. Their leaders were arrested and put in jail. But the spectre of the militancy of the workers still haunts BHP. By the beginning of this century, BHP had decided to spread its activities. At that time, Britain was being challenged by Germany for control of the world's trade. War was inevitable. Therefore, it was in Britain's interest to let Australia have its own iron and steel industry. Iron and steel need good, cheap coal and a good port. This combination existed at Newcastle. But the brand new Australian Labor Party was already committed to setting up its own nationalised iron and steel works there. This didn't stop the New South Wales Labor government from giving the land to BHP. The first steel was rolling in time for World War I. Since that time, the BHP has prospered. If Australia is a lucky country, then BHP has had most of the luck. It is the biggest monopoly in Australia, covering steel, minerals and oil, and is still greedy for more. To get government subsidies, BHP claims that steel making is not very profitable, and so they shut down furnaces, refuse to open newly built plants, and allow their existing capital equipment to run down. The profits are higher in oil and minerals, and so BHP's steel division pumps out propaganda designed to get something more for nothing out of the pockets of Australia's working people. And it makes unemployment in Wollongong among the highest in Australia. All the decisions about Wollongong are made elsewhere. The BHP has never held a board meeting in the town. And who makes the decisions about the BHP? This man is Sir Ian Munro McLennan. For 24 years he has been a director of BHP, and for 6 years, its chairman. The BHP is fond of saying that it is an Australian company, but in fact it is linked to American and British capital in 100 different ways. For instance, its biggest shareholder is the giant British bank, the ANZ. Recently, the ANZ moved its headquarters from London to Australia, and they appointed Sir Ian to be chairman of the new Australian board. He was being rewarded for years of faithful service to foreign capital. The ANZ could have appointed this man, Sir Vincent Fairfax, the chairman of Australia's largest financial institution, the AMP. The ANZ is the largest shareholder in the AMP, and in turn, the AMP owns a great chunk of the BHP. And on it goes, a complex chain of interlocking companies. And the men who own them and direct them have something in common. They went to the same schools. They belong to the same clubs. They live in the same suburbs. And they speak the same language of power and finance. They are the comprador capitalist class. They are called comprador because they serve foreign masters more powerful than themselves. In the heyday of the old British Empire, they served the British. Nowadays, they serve the Americans. Everything is in constant change. And some of them are trying to make deals with the big money of the Soviet Union. Even the staunch anti-communist and former Premier of New South Wales, Sir Robert Askin, arranged a multi-million-dollar loan from the Moscow Narodny Bank for high-rise development in Sydney. But it is the Americans who run Australia, and it is to the Americans that a comprador company like BHP is linked. The Bass Strait oil fields are developed in conjunction with Esso, a Rockefeller company. But this American connection is giving BHP some real problems. The Americans are making an all-out effort to strengthen their own economy so as to have the power to ward off the challenge of Soviet imperialism. The general strategy involves building up American industry at the expense of industry in countries like Australia. As much as possible, Australia will have its factories shut down. In its place, we will become suppliers of raw material to factories elsewhere in the Pacific region. What are conditions like in BHP steel mills? In a company town, it can be dangerous to speak out against the company. Workers are not allowed to hold union meetings on the property. And the shots you are seeing now were filmed illegally, as the BHP allows no cameras inside its works. The men and women who create the wealth for BHP still get none of the profits, and they still get disease and danger. Every year there are 12 deaths, 900 serious accidents, and over 350 derailments. The medical service is appalling. BHP employs but 5 doctors to serve around 20,000 workers, and they're only there during the daylight hours. There are no doctors on afternoon or night shift, when accidents are much more likely. Because of the Tame Cat Iron Workers Union, the BHP is able to force workers to break the safety rules. Consequently, accidents can always be blamed on the workers. After an explosion in the coke ovens in which 3 men were killed, the company was fined $500. Despite years of bloody accidents, there are still no properly equipped emergency rescue units with heavy lifting gear. The Port Kembla steelworks are under their own award. Extremely low basic rates are added to by a bonus system, which works very much in the company's favour. The company claims the bonus system is a productivity incentive, but as production targets are preset, this is just a little hard to believe. The bonus system is used to divide the workers. Different sections are paid different bonus rates, and even within the same section, everyone gets a different percentage of the bonus. The company uses the bonus to keep the workers in line. For example, a shunter who normally gets $140 a week could lose $35 if he were involved in a derailment. The bonus is not even indexed for inflation. Although there are 11,000 members of the Ironworkers Union, often the local branch meeting cannot get a quorum. Wollongong ironworkers rarely see their union secretary, Laurie Short. Short was placed in power by Sir John Kerr and Bob Santamaria's groupers in the early 50s. He is not the most popular man around Wollongong. Factory fodder has been supplied by a massive and brutal immigration program. Although this policy is almost ceased, BHP has committed many crimes in its treatment of migrant workers.
I remember an instant when I was working at the steelworks. Must have been around 1970 or 71, around Christmas. The majority of them didn't speak any English. They were peasants. They came under the impression that they came on an exchange guest working 2-year term, like they went to Germany, without knowing that they were migrants. And the majority of them were illiterate in their own language. Slave labor, that's what I regarded. As far as looking after the children was concerned, if both were lucky enough to find a job, there was nobody there to look after the children. Now, apparently, Turkish family in general have very close family connections. For many of them, the only alternative before they could save the money to go back to Turkey was to send the children over and have them staying with their parents or their in-laws.
Once they come here to Australia, they get beautiful houses. They show them beautiful photos of nice houses, flowers out, say, you got 3 kids, you're going to get there a house with 3 bedrooms. We come here, say, they push us on the hostel, they feed us dirty food, we got sick, you come and work, that money is not enough, we can't find houses where to live, and for the last 3 or 4 days, possibly,
4 days,
4 days, he slept out on the open because he didn't have where to go. You see, that's the situation, what we find here in Australia today.
Çocuklarımızla beraber bir arada bulunmak istiyoruz evsizlik durumundan. Onun için beraber kıymetli çocuklarımızı gözümüzden gönlümüzden düşerek Türkiye'ye gönderdik. Parasının az olma durumundan aldığı $120 15 günde bunların geçinme imkanına gittikten sonra biz $120'la 3 çocuk, biz 5 kişi bir türlü idare etmiyor.
The lady said, as I said before, the only reason why we send our kids back home, because we can't afford to live here. Say, my dream is to bring my kids back, but I can't afford to bring them back. I don't see any future here. I cry day and night for my kids, but there's no future here. And our dream is to make some little money for the fare and go back home. Forget about Australia, we don't worry about Australia. You see, as we said before, he comes here because he got promises down there, that the life here is easier, beautiful houses, that the Australian ambassador in Turkey, the beautiful birds, they told them what they're going to find here, say. It's not 1 in 1,000 truth. It's all lies. He said he would like to learn English, and the first reason is this, that he likes to go to the toilet at work. He doesn't know, the foreman said to him, where are you going? He doesn't know to tell him that he's going to the toilet. I would be pleased to learn English, but how I'm going to do it? Back in Turkey, the union does something for the worker, but not here. And what they're going to do if they stick together to overthrow the union? So they don't know. They don't know. But what he said just now, back at home, the union does something for the worker, not here. The only thing they know here to stay there on the gate and collect the dues. All right?
The workers know that it is useless looking to the union for leadership. BHP is the natural ally of foreign plunderers, and it must be taken over by the Australian people. Only then will these kids escape from the wheel of exploitation. Migrant parents must never again suffer the anguish of having their children torn from them.